congratulations on Disco 4. Now it's fully completed. So I just want to talk about what was the impetus that kicked Volume 4 off.
Volume 4 or the Disco 4?
But not Volume 4, sorry. Yeah, Disco 4, apologies. Yeah, Disco 4, apologies.
The impetus for that would have been, so every LP that we've ever put out, we've had a corresponding remix album. So it's like our first self-titled had Health Disco. And then after the second LP, Get Color, there's Health Disco 2, and so on and so forth. So when we got to the fourth album, you know, we've been doing this a long time, and when we started, there was this incredibly fertile underground remix culture based around blogs and like all this you know, like a band like The Knife would come out with a record and there'd be like fucking 50 great remixes, all disparate in style, of the 10 tracks or whatever, 12 tracks on that record. And there was just so many people, just like any sort of zeitgeist movement in art, film, music, because it was exciting, all these young and engaged and talented people were making really interesting remixes. But as all things in music, you know, there's this waxing and waning and cyclical nature of what is popular and what becomes unpopular. So I think we're very interested in symmetry in the band, so we wanted there to be like, there's a uniformity to the artwork, there's aesthetic continuity. We wouldn't have wanted to just jettison and not have a remix corresponding album. Yeah. But it felt like maybe that was going to be not the most exciting thing creatively. Like, you wanted, for the first two, it was so easy to just find young kids on like fucking MySpace or some, you know, and just be like, this guy's making really cool music. Let's ask him if he wants to do a remix. Yeah. And we're not an established band, so there's no money. People just want to do it on the strength of, like, I want to make something artistic and cool. And by the time we got to the third one, we were really proud of the third remix album, but it definitely felt like it was getting a little bit more laborious to get enough material that we felt like, we don't look at remix albums in the way that they would be traditionally used by like a major label for a huge artist or something, which is, that's not to cast aspersions on it, but that's essentially used as like a way to
cash-ins.
It's a prolonging a marketing cycle. You know, oh, we had this huge album, let's pump out a remix album and see if we can
squeeze a bit more out of
it. And so it's like, obviously that's not what we're doing. So if it doesn't have any artistic merit, or if it doesn't have sufficient artistic merit, it wouldn't make sense to keep doing it. So then we're like, well, what if instead of remixes, which are a collaboration of sorts, what's exciting about them is that you're melding musical styles and someone else's take on your production or your melodies or your voice. So I think the idea of doing a collaboration record was just an extrapolation of like, it's a continuation of the spirit of those disco records, the corresponding remix albums, but it's refashioning it in a way that makes it feel interesting to us and hopefully generates material that feels exciting. Yeah. So we just didn't want to do another remix album, but we didn't want to stop doing it. And so we thought like maybe this will work, and it seemed like it did.
So how did the, because obviously this was a collaborative effort, but what made you want to do Disco 4 Plus? Was that just like a supplement, just like, I'll just add that?
I think because, and you know, John could shed more light on this, is that Disco 4 Plus, I think, was just, people know, like our like really dedicated fan base, like we'll give out remix stems, like in the past. We don't have any sort of gatekeeper, like, oh, the label is gonna have to approve. Like, any fan of ours that wants to try their hand at a remix, like, fuck it, we'll send you the stems. We don't care. So there was still a demand for people wanting to do remixes. And we sort of want to have this very, like, no barrier community relationship with our fans. So there was still a lot of remixes generated that we felt like, well, we want people that took their time and effort to create a song to have an opportunity for it to be released. So Disco 4 Plus is like the continuation of like the normal remix system that we had.
Yeah.
But really, like Disco 4 and 4 Part 2, which I'll get to that, is the reason there's a Part 2. There wasn't supposed to be a Part 2.
Ah.
The reason there's a Part 2 is because the pandemic just kept fucking going on and on.
Right.
And it was like, it's a really great way to work when most of Part 2 is like entirely written remotely with those artists. Like they're in, you know, other countries, other states, and everybody else, ourselves included, would have like gone back on tour. And there was certain mitigating factors. Like the smart thing to do, and a lot of bands did this, was to just make a new record. So you had a new record to go when you're gonna come back. But like I had just had a kid, and like we had, before vaccines, there was really no way for us to work in person.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to make a new health record without being in the same room together as a band.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah.
But if we're working on a track with fucking Poppy and she's in Europe or in New York or whatever, and we're just emailing each other, or like Nine Inch Nails, we did that with them. It was really funny because everybody's based in LA.
Yeah.
And all of us, Trent and Atticus weren't working together either.
Yeah.
Like everybody was remote. We do like phone calls. It was funny, we're all in the same city, 5 people basically. And it was like the drummer sends us like a little snippet of drums, and then like Trent adds a piano line, and then I add a vocal line, and then Atticus and John are like mixing it, and it was like kind of sucks, right? But it's also very conducive, or rather the pandemic is really very conducive to that kind of work.
Yeah. Well, that was actually going to be one of the questions later on. But so while we're on that, then, so Part 2's like that. How was because I always had a chuckle listening to the Disco 4 albums, because I imagined the collaborative process to be like Run DMC. It's like that, like, you know, or like Aerosmith, the Run DMC Aerosmith music video where you're all in a room and you bounce off each other. So how, for Part 1, was it a different process then? Were you all together or not?
Yeah, some of the tracks, and even a couple of tracks on Part 2, like if it was an LA band and we could share the same space, we would. I'd have to look at the track listing. There are a couple of tracks on Part 1 that were completely remote.
Right.
But
because midway through the pandemic.
But most of those, I would say, we would try to schedule a day. You know, like JPEG Mafia was in LA. We did a day with him, and then the song got finished, like by respectively sending each other music. Or like the Ghost main track we did was like fucking done in one night, and we were all together in a studio.
Yeah.
And then I think a few of those towards the end of that, it's like Hunter Gex, we know Dylan, we've known him for a long time. We went to his studio. Obviously, what's one of the things that's advantageous about Los Angeles is like a lot of musicians are based there.
Yeah.
And then by Part 2, I mean, even by the end of Part 1, we were finishing Part 1, pandemic was fully on. So like the original track we did for Part 1, which is Cyberpunk 2020 or whatever, like that was the first health song that's ever been written where Beej, John, and I were not ever in the same room.
Right.
So it was like, I wrote a guitar part, and then John added production, and then Beej wrote that drum beat, and like we just kept refining it down until we had a song.
Right.
And that was definitely kind of like, I'm really happy with how that song came out, but at the same time, I definitely felt like I don't want to make another record in its entirety this way.
Yeah.
Sort of the virtues that people have been trumpeting of remote work. I'm sure that's true for if you're like a fucking corporate accountant or some sort of thing where it really doesn't matter. You're in like a boring office culture.
Yeah.
But I didn't have some epiphany where I thought, oh, I'll move to the mountains and I'll just work remotely. It's fucking miserable to me. It's not how I want to write music.
No.
But when you're working on collaborations, it doesn't seem like that much of a barrier because you have this opportunity to work with someone that you wouldn't normally get to, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, for example, a Nine Inch Nails track would never have happened without COVID. It's a small silver lining, but you get a Health Nine Inch Nails collaboration because normally those guys would just be too busy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah.
The reason I hit them up was it was like I was fully aware that everyone was at home. You couldn't even fucking go anywhere. There was nothing to do.
No. Yeah.
That was like pre-vaccines, you know. So it's like no one was out. There's nothing going on.
Right. How did you guys decide on who the lineup was going to be for the project?
You know, we get asked that. There was never like a master list or anything.
No.
It's more like it's pretty organic how it came about because you'd work with one person. Something in that process would make you think of someone else, or just something would sort of hove into your field of vision. You're listening to some thing and it reminds you of, oh, this band is like that band. The one criteria would be not just do I like this music, but do I think that it would somehow work with our style? Like, would the styles potentially complement each other where I think that we could make something interesting?
Right.
And so then it kind of just, like, some we directly, we're already friends, reached out, you know? And then the one that was, like, on the list was Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Just because if you'd asked us, oh, if you could do a collaboration with anybody, you get asked questions like that in interviews, living or dead, which is kind of a silly question. The way I thought about it more pragmatically was, well, what's a legendary band that I think would actually work well with the style?
Definitely.
And that would be the number one band. So.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you? I mean, you already know Trent Reznor, were you? Wasn't he involved with Death Magic?
No, but he was involved with a track on Disco Part 2.
Oh, right.
And we had toured with him and done shows together, and he'd always just been very friendly and helpful, so it wasn't like the scenario wasn't I asked my manager or our label to reach, that would never have worked. There was already I had a direct contact line that was established on a friendly relationship, so I was able to just ask him directly.
Right.
Send him an example of something we'd done for part 1 and say, hey, this is what we've been doing. I'm sure you guys are really busy, but if you're interested, we'd love to do it with you. And then, kind of much to my surprise, he said, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it would have, it's not a kind of thing that I would have even ever thought about. There's some that like Iggy Pop is on the same label as us. And like, I really wanted an Iggy Pop. I made like a couple of different tracks that I thought like his voice would work really well on, and you know, our label was sending them to his manager, and I was like, oh man, that would just be, because if I had Nine Inch Nails, Iggy Pop, I'm like, I'm fucking done, you know. But we had some other weird ones, like I had our manager try to track down John Cale, like fuck John Cale collab, like maybe he'll play the viola, I don't fucking know. And it was just crickets. I never heard back.
Oh, worth a shot though, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But if I knew John Cale and could fucking send him an email, that's how the Nine Inch Nails one worked.
Yeah. Right, so obviously it was a very ambitious project, but I don't think a lot of people realise just how, well, this is just me surmising, but I'd imagine it's a very laborious sort of project that requires a lot of effort, and you know, for you guys personally, you know, you've gone from being a three-piece bouncing off each other to having to rely on other people to be committed to the project. So the question is, you know, I mean, and you also have to make these, you know, this armory of sounds palatable, you know, and cohesive. So what were the main challenges in bringing Disco 4 together?
I think honestly the biggest challenge is just time management of the other artists. You can't, there can be a sort of predilection for a label to want to schedule, you know, like, hey, let's wrap this one up. I'm like, we need to get this track done, and you're kind of, you have to remind them that it's not the ball is not entirely in our court.
Yeah.
To we can't just crack a whip and make someone finish, and people have complex personal and professional lives, so they might be finishing their own record, or something came up, or they had a family issue, and so that was hard, just juggling all those different things of once you decide that you're trying to do a record and you want there to be 10 to 12 tracks, you know, you're not sure. I mean, most of the ones that we ever started got finished, so that was quite surprising. And I think that's part of the reason we did 2 of them, was if the first one had been fucking just pulling teeth to get it done, and we were beating our heads against the wall trying to communicate with other people and them losing interest and not feeling like it was a process that we wanted to repeat, we would just be like, all right then. But it was fairly fluid, and I don't know, I guess it's just like a time thing. I think that all these things happen in music, you know, where the way music history, it's always like, oh, Nirvana started grunge. Like there's some sort of, it's sort of that great men fallacy of history. And that's not really how it works. It's always like this coalescing of all these people are, there's just things that are around in the culture where you're thinking about it. And I think that at the same time that we were trying to make this, and some press has been like, oh, you guys are like doing this sort of flagship thing. And it's like, well, collaborations have been this de rigueur thing in hip hop culture and pop culture for a long time, you know, and they're like features and combining different artists. And in underground music and in rock and metal and things like that, there's a little bit more of the vestige of the sort of, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, the sort of sovereignty of the artist. Like, this is my band, so I wrote all the music, and I control everything, and that's how I demonstrate my fucking artistic genius or something. And I think that that's kind of melting away. That culturally, definitely. It's just not as valid. And so all these people that wouldn't have done collaborations before, like ourselves, are just open to the idea. And so we have the idea to start doing these the same time that all those other people are thinking like, oh, that would be interesting. So that's how it kind of worked out. We didn't have any sort of, and I think that's why ultimately it was fairly easy to do, because it's a moment where, not dissimilar to the reason I brought up the analogy of remix culture at the time we released the first disco, is that was a moment where all these people were fucking interested in the remix as a piece of art. Like, what is it? What's its value in the musical landscape? And I think the collaboration is having that moment right now. So we just happened to be lucky to do all this at that time.
I think I definitely feel like you've been a bit humble. I do get like with the press saying that you're spearheading this sort of thing. I mean, it is always there, like you said, but I feel like you guys have really got a hold on it. And you said before that you've obviously analysed which other artists would better suit your sound. So, but was there a conscious effort to go, shit, well, can we make this album sound as cohesive as it does? Because it's honestly, when you listen to those 2 albums together, it is amazing how cohesive it sounds. It shouldn't sound that cohesive, and I think a lot of bands fail with that. But you guys have got a handle on it. Are you very much aware of planning things out and making it?
I mean, we're obviously going to be acutely paying attention to what we're doing and the kind of artists that we're asking, and but you know, there's less control than you would have making your own record, but it is still similar in that it's still all kind of this random happy accident process that, like, when a band makes a good record, it's not because they're so good at planning. It's not like that. It's just things just kind of happen that way. And if it comes across as like being humble or something, I think that that's maybe because I've been doing this long enough to know that you can have all kinds of plans and try to be really strategic, but in the end, what happens is a series of random accidents, you know, in terms of like the writing process. So I think that it is lucky that the records seem so cohesive, I mean, some of that is like track listing and the way we want it to flow and things like that. And then after we get 5 tracks, we're like, okay, well, we want a little bit of balance. We need some more musicality. We've had a bunch of fucking heavy tracks. Like, how do we... And that's the same way we would go about writing a record, you know? Where you feel like, okay, we've got a single, but we need a ballad. Or we need an opener, and now we need an ender. And, you know, sort of, it's a puzzle. Or it's like you're trying to uncover a fossil. You're like, okay, here's the tail.
Yeah.
We got to get the head, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I stole that analogy from Stephen King, by the way. So, yeah. If there's one virtue that I think that we have, because we're like a fucking punk band, basically, in ethos. So,
yeah.
I don't play guitar very well. I can't really sing. You know, it's not...
Well, yeah.
There's not... What I mean is, in music history, you have, it's like, oh, Jimmy Page, high five God, rip a solo, you know? There's things like that. What we are, though, is we're very much students of music, and we love music and paying attention to what we think is interesting, what we think is cool, and I think that maybe is the attribute or component that put us in a position for the collaboration album to work out well, because we just are very much still engaged in trying to pay attention to what other artists are doing. And and because we also, it's been a blessing and a curse, you know, we don't have a genre. So now I'd say we're the closest to ever having a genre. It's like we're like a neo-industrial band, you know, because that is sort of opened up and people are more open to that kind of thing. But one of the benefits of that is that you can make really different records. You know, if you're a band like Interpol or something, you come out with a record and everybody loves the sound, and then now that's your band.
It's so distinct.
And it's fucking great because instantaneously all these people can fall in love with it. And you can become fucking a star and all these things. But then how do you change that sound?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
We don't have that problem. Like, we didn't have a first album. Our first album sounds like a no wave record, and it's like barely musical.
It's structural, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like we were really into like process music, and like I was listening to like Stockhausen and shit like that, and, like 12-tone music. So it's like you can fucking go anywhere from there. You know, so that I think that we were able to sort of try on different hats, and so this is like another phase of the band's experimentation.
Right, cool. Where are we at? Right, I'm glad I'm actually interviewing this, because in Dead Flowers, your guitar part, the opening guitar part, I might be massively over-analysing this, but it sounds like... You've ever played Max Payne, the game, the first one? Have you ever played it?
I have a little bit.
Right, well, the soundtrack to that, there's a track on there called Max's Nightmare, and it sounds eerily similar to that. So I'm just wondering, without barking up the wrong tree, is it a nod to that, or is it just purely incidental?
Purely incidental.
Right.
So the that song, which sounds nothing like any song we would ever write or any song Poppy would write, the very genesis of that song was like a phone demo that Poppy sent us that was like this very rough sketch on an acoustic guitar with a vocal melody, which the vocal melody never got used, but the guitar line was like something in drop D, and so I tried to preserve the feel of what she was playing.
Right.
And I just did it in like this weird kind of, like, I didn't want it to just be like drop D sounding.
Yeah.
So I did it like a surf riff, which is my way of like interpreting that, like basically keeping the melodic structure so it would be recognizable to her that like I honored the melody she sent, but put my own spin on it. So it had nothing to do with...
Right.
I'm familiar with because we did the score for Max Payne 3, I'm familiar with the original score from the Remedy games because we had to do the theme. But no, I have no fucking... I think I played it or was in someone's house, but no, that was like...
Yeah.
But that's what... But here's the thing. That's what's awesome about... And I should have just not answered that question.
Right.
Because it's way cooler. It's way cooler when the interpretation is open. It's like, maybe it is about that. Maybe it isn't. It's like, it kind of ruins the shit when you answer this question.
The thing is,
Cut this out of the
interviewed.
fucking video here where I pour myself some San Pellegrino.
I interviewed John a couple of years ago, and I answered a few. I asked a few Max Payne 3 questions. I don't like being that guy where it's like, oh god, he's asking another Max Payne 3 question.
Oh no, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just meant more like if someone asks about lyrics or something, I try not to give any direct answers.
Mm.
I mean, the lyrics are usually
That's
never
fair.
very direct anyway.
Mm.
But when you do that, I think you sometimes risk ruining a song for somebody.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Right, so you kind of answered it, but so obviously Iggy Pop would have been a big a dream to collaborate with him. But is there anyone else that you would love to collaborate with for future tracks?
I mean, it's funny because, well, we were. It's very sad. We were trying to do a Power Trip collaboration.
All right.
And Riley passed away.
Oh shit.
So that was like, we like met with them and they were gonna send us stems of one of their songs, and then that was cut short by his untimely death.
Nice.
So that was one that we were really excited about. And I'm trying to think of like,
if you could really go the distance.
well, I mean, there was some other ones like years ago we did some Australian dates with Wire, the post-punk legend, and I really wanted to have that one happen. So we got in touch through a mutual friend, and they were making a record. Mine always tend to be like, I want to do these like old guy ones that nobody.
Well, you will do, won't you? Because
well, just shit that I came up on, So it's like Iggy Pop, like
that'd be crazy. That.
I mean, I have a song that I think he would have just fucking killed it on.
Yeah.
And it was like I had 2 different mutual friends. Maybe it'll happen someday, because like I know that he's played a couple of our tracks on his radio show, so we're in his sort of
right. He's aware.
Yeah. And like I'd really like to do some ambient collaborations.
Yeah. Cool.
Brian Eno, hit him
God.
up.
Yeah.
No, and now that since we're in Manchester, I would love to do a New Order health song.
Oh yeah, that'd be crazy as well.
But I mean, I don't think that's gonna happen.
No, but it'd be crazy. That would be crazy. Right, so obviously, what the COVID thing, lockdown, that was pretty fucked up. But when it all kicked off, you guys opened up a Patreon page.
Mm-hmm.
With Discord access, and I obviously, because I was in amongst it as well, I signed up and I was blown away by like the community. It's a really, really humble community with you get to chat with the bands and look at funny memes and stuff like that. But what brought that idea on to do that?
We have a friend who helps us with some digital marketing kind of things, and I think that we just didn't. He's very plugged into like gaming culture, and ever since Max Payne, John is a gamer, but ever since Max Payne, we've kind of had this connection to gaming culture, and we've had a lot of our fan base has like really grown alongside a fan base of people who are also very into games, and there's a lot of like technical competence in that community, like understanding of the internet in ways that so I think for John and I initially we were like, who the fuck wants to go on our who would want to be on our Discord and definitely who the fuck is gonna just give us money, because obviously in the streamer community people are doing that shit all the time. They're like, oh, I like this streamer, I gave him $5 you know, because I want him to like not have to have a regular job, and it's almost kind of there's also this element of like it feels like we're kind of friends, the same way that you'd be in touch with a friend remotely. They live in a different country, they live in a different state or whatever. So at that time of indefinite lockdown, and of course everybody was wondering what they were if their job had been put on hold or they'd lost their job, they're wondering what the fuck they're gonna do. And in the music industry, you're like, especially for what we do, like playing 500 cap clubs or something, you're like, I don't know how this is gonna be the last thing that comes back.
Yeah.
Sweaty, unventilated fucking room packed with people, you know.
Yeah.
So it felt like, and we've been doing this for a long time, to where you're like, oh, this isn't the end of music, but is this the end of my music career? Because, you know, what if it takes years to come back?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that was sort of, we were like, I don't know how long it's going to take. Maybe people will sign up for a Patreon. Maybe people will use Discord. And then particularly the Discord community just sort of exploded.
It's crazy.
And we had no, you know, idea that it would be... I mean, I think the one thing that I take from it is that we have really fucking cool fans.
Yeah.
Because there's been all these really... People have, like, gotten into relationships who met in our Discord, and, like, all these friends, and they'll fly to shows to meet each other. And like you said, it's a very humble, like...
It is.
It's a very, like, we've had the fortune of, like, people have felt, like, comfortable enough there to come out as trans, or come out... Just huge make life changes that have been facilitated by being supported by other people in the Discord that are like-minded, and we just were blown away that anything like that would have happened. So I have no fucking idea why it worked so well, but going back to our friend who was very much part of like gaming culture, he was sort of telling us, he's like, no, this will work for your fans. He's like, I'm a fan, I know.
Yeah.
Because we just sort of had this self-deprecating old man, like, I'm gonna go on some fucking message board for...
Yeah.
It's really funny because I remember at the time someone trying to explain to me what Discord was. And now I like completely understand what it is. But it's not like I feel any better at explaining it to someone who doesn't use one.
I think the clinch for me was definitely the prospect of unreleased material.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I'll take every crumb of unused material I can get. So,
well, actually, it's a really cool way to have any sort of avenue to do that.
Sorry. But yeah, so Disco 4 is completed. Is there a new album in the works?
Yes.
There is, yeah?
Yep.
What can we... So obviously we've talked about how you guys don't really have a regional sound, so is it going to go into a different path?
It will be, I think, the darkest and potentially heaviest record we've ever made. I know it's going to be the darkest record we've ever made.
Yeah. Is that indicative of...
It's just where the material is going.
Yeah.
You know? And then I think it's probably indicative of how fucking shitty everything's been.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're literally living in an 80s sci-fi film.
Yeah, so I think we didn't mean to be prescient or anything. We've always been kind of making this Skynet post-Terminator 2 kind of music, and then we just kept doing it long enough that it fucking just became like that. So, I mean, yeah, it just feels like sort of prophetic, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited about the music we're writing so far.
Do you think it'll be... I know it's really cliche to say, but do you think it's on its way to be the best thing you've ever done?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
It feels like that to me.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like, I don't want to, like, I don't really believe in this kind of shit, but knock on wood, I don't want to, like, jinx myself, but we've made other records where I felt like unsure in the process of what we were making, and in the end still chipped away at it and felt like we made a really good record.
Yeah.
Something I could be proud of.
Yeah.
I mean, any record you always have regrets. Like if you don't have regrets about a record you made, then like you're probably not really paying attention.
Yeah.
Or up too much your own ass.
Yeah.
But this definitely feels like we are making the record we're supposed to be making right now. So just in that way alone, that to me indicates that it could be one of the better things that we've done.
Yeah. I think that's a culmination of everything that you've learned.
Exactly. Like, it feels almost like some of the things we've touched on, our band not having a genre and all these different things, and then doing a fucking video game score and doing compositional work, and then doing a collaborations record with other artists that we really admire that have totally disparate styles, and then the fucking world falling apart with COVID and the war in Ukraine and the global financial crisis and impending doom of global warming and my nightmarish first flirtation with fatherhood and all these things.
Yeah, all
it
at
sort
once.
of led us to this moment that, on the bright side, feels like we're making a good record.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I would say about that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, that's it really. That's a fun question really. What do you think is great about the UK as opposed to the US? What do you appreciate about the UK?
Well, the front. It's funny you asked that. One thing I would, because it just pertains to this conversation, is UK music interviews are so much more thoughtful,
Really?
and articulate than it's like fucking shocking.
Right? Is it really?
And I don't want to say something to disparage
Yeah.
music journalists in the United States,
Yeah.
but it's way more kind of systematic in the way, as if, okay, it's like a press release.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. It feels like anytime we do interviews with someone in the UK, they, big or small publication, they listen to the music beforehand and really have a thoughtful question to ask you about each thing.
Yeah.
There's a nuanced, researched, and well-spoken attribute to journalism in the United Kingdom as far as music journalism goes.
All right.
And I think for us, it's just like, England's a little hard for me because I fucking hate the weather.
Yeah.
I grew up in Seattle, so
Oof.
I grew up in very similar weather,
Yeah.
and I hated it.
Yeah.
So it's like the rest of the band, all Southern Californians. And, you've lived your whole life here. For me personally, like, I thought I was just, like, moody and pissy and dark, and I am.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that I completely had seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to California, I was like, holy shit, I cannot live.
Well, she felt really good.
Oh,
Maybe.
so much better.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I just, biologically, I need sunshine.
Yeah.
Which I know that, like, the music I make, but God, imagine me here, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to, like, live the rest of my life in Manchester, it's nothing against Manchester, it's just the weather. I can't,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I want it to be fucking sunny and warm and everything. So, I can handle, like, the little bite-sized, like, tour.
Yeah.
And we've been here a lot. I mean, I think that this tour for us, what we love about being over here is that it's just some sort of reminder that you can get back to maybe doing the thing that you love to do, and to see people and to see different kinds of people in different places, and that there's something beyond your fucking Netflix account and your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like I wouldn't call myself an Anglophile, but maybe I don't know. There's plenty of things. I was just talking to someone when we were driving in here about. I don't know if there's any, for me personally, I don't know that there's any city on Earth that per capita has produced as much music that I love as this city.
Right.
Just like, if you go through and there's all these bands you don't even know they were from. You're from Manchester too? Like, Jesus Christ.
It's a hotbed, isn't it, for artists? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, obviously the factory records scene is like had a pretty big effect on our sound, like from the inception of the band, and also just like not just musically.
Is that one of the reasons why you actually? A lot of bands, this pisses me off. There's a lot of bands overseas that come here and they tend to neglect the Northwest a lot. Is that why you always come here to Manchester? Because you love the city?
I mean, I think that like the first DIY, like fucking playing house shows tour we ever did over here was with a band that was from Manchester, and it culminated in. So this was kind of like our home base, and we stayed here quite a bit. So got to know the city a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like the dudes that are promoting this show, Now Wave, they've always done our shows in Manchester, and like everything they do is incredibly tasteful. Like there's like a uniformity to the poster art and the venues that they put their stamp on it. It just seems to have this continuation of like there's just no music history wise for me for what I love.
Yeah.
There's no fucking cooler city than Manchester, so I can't imagine playing if you're going to come to the UK.
Yeah.
And I don't really know why anybody would neglect. Like I said, we're from the US, so it's like everything is like it's so close.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna play a show in London,
yeah,
you might as well play a show in Manchester.
You'd be surprised. Also, you get like a London date, and then it's like you'll get I don't know once like Glasgow or something, and then that's it. It's like
I mean, I can see how it's tricky here, to do Manchester and Leeds. They're completely different cities. They have completely different styles, accents, feels, but they're fucking like 35 minutes apart from each other. So it can be hard.
Yeah.
Because people can drive.
Yeah.
So we've done that before where it's like, are we going to do Leeds or are we going to do Manchester?
Right.
And
right.
we've had great shows in both.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I just like, as a student of musical history, I just love Manchester. So
yeah.
we always try to get to, I mean, like, this would be my favorite UK city, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, London, the shows are awesome, but London to me is like, it's just such a gargantuan.
Yeah, it's a behemoth, isn't it?
And it's just like, it feels like the way New York feels to me, which is like, I love New York, but it's so prohibitively expensive, I think it's killing art.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, how do you have a city where people could do cool shit, like where young people are going to be able to do things like this, have an underground venue and have cool shows, and also have a job where they work in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have an apartment in London and have a cool job.
No,
Like,
you
you're
can't.
fucked.
No, yeah, it's too expensive.
So I think that's
yeah.
it. That's the thing that's happening in a lot of American cities too. It's finally starting to happen in Los Angeles. We've lived there for so long, and like the coolest thing about LA was, even though it was such a huge place, for the longest time it was very affordable.
Yeah, it's terrible now, isn't it?
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Now everything
Yeah.
is like totally priced out.
Mm.
Like, you're fucked. Same kind of thing. Like, it's not as bad as New York or San Francisco or London yet.
Yeah.
But we like have a housing shortage, so like, there's no. The English have, you guys have more of an inveterate, like, really ingrained class system.
Yeah.
But for Americans, sort of the dream of the middle class, like our parents' generation, was like, you could have just like a regular job and buy a house.
Yeah.
And be a homeowner.
Yeah.
And that's fucking gone. It's
Yeah.
just totally gone.
Yeah.
And I think that is why you're seeing things like in the United States where men age 18 to 35, the leading cause of death is fucking drug overdoses. Because there's not this sort of veneer or fake dream of like, oh, I'll get a good job and then I'll get a house and I'll have a family. It's like, no, you need to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
Like, you need to literally have millions of dollars to buy a house, unless you live in like Wyoming or something, and it's like, and what are you going to do? Where are you going to work?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a very different.
Right.
I think you guys have like a little bit more familiarity with like, oh yeah, you get fucked by the class system.
yeah, definitely up with that. Yeah, but I mean, there's more. I mean, I suppose it depends where you live. Where I live, it's affordable prices for houses. You can buy a house relatively easy. Like say, go to London, you are fucked. Like, it's too expensive. So, but yeah, thanks very much for your time, Jake. It's
Thank
been
you.
Wonderful.
Appreciate it.